Well, we all knew this was going on, but now it's official. The media has been covering up the Epstein debacle from the beginning. ABC News' Amy Robach was caught on a hot mic during Good Morning America. In fact, hot mic probably isn't the right term. It looks to me like this is more of a leak. I think, based on how it looks, I don't know if Project Veritas, who released this, has given details as how they acquired it. I doubt that they would give those details, but from the looks of it, it seems like somebody in the control room heard this because this was during a time when they were off air, I believe, and the show was not being broadcast. And somebody in the control room heard Amy Robach saying this, and they decided to record it on their phone. It looks like. I don't think they took the file directly and ripped it directly from the feed. And they, took her testimony of saying, like, yeah, it really sucks. I had this Epstein story for 3 years, and the network wouldn't let me run it. And boy, this is only like a minute and a half clip, but she gets really at the meat of it and totally accuses, all of the right people, everyone who you knew was involved with the Epstein story, everyone who you knew didn't want this getting out, pretty much indicts them in a cover-up. And her attitude is like, darn, I did good work, and I worked so hard on this, and then they wouldn't let me run it. Shucks. That's just the way things are. But it pisses me off to see now that everyone else gets to report on Epstein. When I wanted to do it, they told me, she said the first thing they told him was, Epstein, who's that? Nobody knows who that is. Go get us something on Johnny Depp or whatever the latest celebrity is. I guess his divorce was like 3 years ago, right? So that would be a contemporary story. But over at ABC, they don't care that Epstein was tied in with important people. They don't care that even though he himself might not have been all that famous, he should be famous. If it weren't for the media constantly covering up all of his crimes and all of his relationships with some of the most powerful people on the planet. But no, ABC News, just like all mainstream media outlets, are not interested in delivering important relevant news to their viewers. They're interested in entertaining their viewers and keeping eyeballs on the screen and making people feel happy and telling them, showing them things that, doesn't hurt their brain too much, but keeps them interested. And that is, of course, celebrity interviews and pop culture news and things like that. But dressed up in the guise of, professional newsman like David Muir. They give you what they claim is, world news of everything that, in a 30-minute span that matters, that's going on the planet today. But really, they're just feeding you sort of a homogenized and processed diet of propaganda. And so Amy Robach, I believe I'm saying her name correctly. That's how it looks. It looks German, so that's how it should be said. Anyway, Amy Robach goes on to detail, or at least give us a glimpse of exactly what she had for 3 years. Not only had she gotten an interview with Virginia Roberts, who was, the most well-known Epstein victim, someone who was in hiding for 12 years. Someone who did not want to be found by Epstein, someone who had lots of evidence of abuse that she, did not want to share with anyone because she was, frankly, afraid of getting whacked by the intelligence community, I'd imagine. And she apparently had pictures and other evidence that implicated not only Jeffrey Epstein, but Alan Dershowitz, a former member of O.J. Simpson's Dream Team, and also a Harvard professor and all-around powerful elitist. President William Jefferson, B.J. Bill Jefferson Clinton, such great irony that his first two initials are B.J. Who could have thought of that up? And finally, the fourth powerful person that apparently Virginia Roberts gave this Amy Robach, dirt on was Prince Andrew of England. Prince Andrew, of course, has been rumored to be a pedophile for years, and the royal family is very unhappy that would get out. They're not necessarily mad at Andrew for being a pedophile. There's been plenty of pedophiles in the history of the European royalty. Of course, I believe the mentor of I forget his name. Is it Prince? Not Prince Charles. I always forget the name of the Queen's husband, the man who's not the king, but you would think would be a king since he's married to the Queen. Anyway, his mentor, the former, I believe, the last Viceroy of India, was a total out-and-out pedophile and had abused lots of young boys in India during his time there. And so pedophilia is nothing new to these people. Touching little boys and girls, I assume, is just sort of a part of their lifestyle. But they don't want to talk about that because you see the plebs, the peasant class, that goes against, and of course the bourgeoisie. This goes against bourgeois Christian morality as we understand it. And so the entrenched elites are forced into the darkness, into the closet, to pursue their most, basic desires. And that, in part, is the utility of someone like Epstein. He takes on a lot of the burden and the trouble of acquiring these children for these awful predators. Now, of course, the downside of this is that, someone like Epstein also then will have dirt on any of his friends who he shares his toys with. And that, of course, is ultimately why Epstein got whacked in prison, because he knew too much, and the powerful people who he helped exercise their sick and twisted self-understood right to abuse children. Those people weren't just going to sit by and let Epstein, crucify them and make sure that they all hung together. Now, what I find really damning and the most interesting here, something that we didn't know necessarily, at least I didn't, from an American perspective, looking at this, I mostly focused on, Jeffrey Epstein and the CIA and Mossad, to a lesser extent the Clintons, although I don't think the Clintons would ever get their hands dirty with someone like him. What came out of this is that Amy Robach said, no, it's not like, Bill Clinton called us up and said, hey, kill that story, because Hillary and I don't want to be implicated in an international pedophile ring. No, it was, she said, the palace, referring to the British royal family, Buckingham Palace, I would assume, although I guess it could have been one of their other many palaces. I don't know necessarily which palace they were calling from, but one of the palaces, meaning the British royal family, called up ABC News and said, no, you're not going to do that. We don't want you exposing Prince Andrew, even though everyone already knows he's a disgusting, inhuman pedophile. We don't want you talking about that. So if you run this story, you're never going to get to talk to Will and Kate again. And, you might think at first, well, who cares? Will and Kate are, meaningless people. It's it's just a stupid prince and princess of a showy monarchy. I mean, it's not like the prince, this little prince guy, has any real importance. He doesn't have any power. It's not like he's a head of state or anything like that. Of course, technically in the future he'll be a head of state, but a powerless head of state. So why would ABC News trade access to these two dolts in exchange for killing a very important story that implicated, a billionaire, an ex-Harvard professor and, celebrity attorney, a former U.S. president, and, of course, Prince Andrew, who actually is an important person outside of being a member of the royal family. He's a big arms dealer, from what I understand, and has a lot to do with, a lot of ties to the military-industrial complex. The reason why ABC would choose, this deal and say, oh, no, we don't want to lose access to Kate and Will, we got to kill this story, is because they care about the celebritard nonsense, because that's what sells for them. To them, breaking an important story about how the elites are abusing children, might have some short-term gain, but be very difficult because, not only would the elites never trust you again and not, feed you any so-called leaks, also known as disinformation, propaganda, that sort of thing, you'd lose probably a lot of your intelligence ties if you exposed an intelligence asset like Jeffrey Epstein, and of course, you would have the ire of the British establishment and the American establishment. It would cause a lot of problems for your network. And so this is a pretty obvious choice to make for ABC News. If Jeffrey Epstein were just, some random guy who had a lot of rich friends, who didn't really have any power but, made their money honestly, and just happened to be rich and decided to buy up a bunch of children and bring them to this secluded island and abuse them, well then the media would jump all over that. They would love talking about evil rich people abusing children. But the problem is that these rich people are so rich that they have the kind of money that you only get from being in power, from being a part of the modern aristocracy. These people don't live by the same rules that you and I do. We're members of the third estate, whereas most of these folks are, de facto ennobled. They do not have to operate by the same laws. Somebody like Epstein, gets arrested for kid touching, and they give him a slap on the wrist. Why? Because they live by different rules. The laws apply differently to them than they do to us. And of course, beyond that, the media really, as this story should show you, are puppets of the entrenched establishment. The media is not here to inform you. The media here is, I think, as I said earlier, exists to feed you a steady diet of propaganda to keep people silent and happy and satisfied, and as in the words of Noam Chomsky, to manufacture consent for the state. Truth, sure, is a very important thing to ordinary people, and there is a market for truth. There are organizations that have the potential to make money by, reporting true facts to ordinary people. However, the establishment media, the mainstream media, doesn't exist for that purpose, to give you truth. They exist rather to do quite the opposite, to distract from truth and to pacify the masses. And in doing so, they earn the trust and the goodwill of the elite class, and that's how they, do things like get sources. They have to. This is a natural instinct of entrenched media. When they become entrenched, they do things like trying to build relationships with sources. Well, how do you build a good relationship with a source? Well, in exchange for whatever information they may give you, you're going to go kind of easy on them in your reporting. And so that's turned into the media essentially taking whatever disinformation they're fed by organizations like the CIA or the Pentagon more broadly, or by politicians in Washington, and just essentially regurgitating them, acting as stenographers, and saying, okay, this is fact, and in effect they are just propagandizing us all. And so I think that about covers all of this topic. If you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.